Hey there, it's that time of the year. Welcome to our season 4 wrap up of the Digital Adoption Show. And what a season it has been! We have covered everything from digital innovations that are reshaping industries to AI avatars that might just take over your next training session. Honestly, if you're a fan of tech, learning, and all things digital, this season has been packed with gems. But hey, we know life gets busy, so we did the hard work for you. We picked the top 5 episodes you absolutely need to check out. So let's get right into it. So, kicking things off, we have got Casey Everett. Casey is one of those people who makes insurance sound cool. He has spent over 20 years in the industry, and in this episode, he breaks down some of the biggest digital innovations happening in insurance right now. Think smarter data, better claim processes, and what all it means for you as a customer. If you want a sneak peek into where insurance is headed, this one is a must listen for you.
And I think technology, obviously, as a pervasive element, is impacting any number of things with the broader economy and so forth. My expertise certainly rests within insurance claims specifically. So my answers are likely going to skew that direction just
Mhm.
for that purpose. But when I look at the claims environment that we work in, a very dynamic environment, it's constantly changing environment. We focus in our claims environment specifically on four areas of accountability. We call it our balanced accountabilities or our four pillars.
Mhm.
And specifically, that what we look at in that arena is number one, our customer experience. How are we delivering value to our customer? What are we doing from a product and service standpoint to make sure that we are attracting new customers and sustaining the customers that we have currently? The other three that we look at are accuracy, making sure that we pay what is owed, right? We have a duty and an obligation to our policyholders, but as well as those that we're liable to that may be affected in that regard. Number three, we look at the efficiency that we do that, making sure that we're doing that cost effectively, as expediently as possible to make sure that we're solving and rectifying those claims as quickly as we can. And then lastly, our fourth pillar is around our internal value proposition, our own employees, or the engagement we call it, making sure that we're investing in them, that we're skilling them up to make sure that they're able to deliver at their full capability. So when I think about technology in this space, certainly touches all four areas of our accountability in a big and meaningful way. And again, we could take the conversation any number of different areas, but my mind immediately goes to a few technologies. First and foremost, I think about the impact that telematics has had on our world. And when I talk about
Mhm.
telematics, we've applied that in the insurance industry, probably most prominently in our underwriting space, trying to understand our
Yeah.
customers' driving habits, their
Yeah.
behaviors, making sure that we are learning from that, adapting, adjusting, creating products aligned with that. But my mind goes immediately to the interesting claims applications that might
Mhm.
stem from that. I think about the impact that could have on accident scene service options, perhaps
Mhm.
dispatching OSHA to meet you at the scene of an accident, right? I think about maybe an immediate claim filing option to allow our adjuster to or near immediately be in contact with you,
Mhm.
having just been in a loss, to start that process of recovery right away, right? Without having to wait. I
Mhm.
think about enabling us with maybe some better vehicle damage predictions, right? If we know the
Mhm.
G force was of a certain caliber in the vehicle,
Yeah.
can we start making some assumptions or making some informed decisions to better handle that claim and route the vehicle to expedite and speed up the process? So there's just a ton of potential that exists in that area of telematics. On the other side of that, I think there's a world that we've already started to apply in the
Mhm.
avenue of machine learning and automation.
Yeah.
AI certainly, which in the last few years has taken off in terms of the application. We're just now starting to scratch the surface in terms of what's possible. But I think about how can we personalize our service option for our customer a little bit more meaningfully, right? How can we increase the speed and the accuracy for our customer to try and get them back on the road to recovery that much sooner than they might have done otherwise? Many people look at AI and think, well, it's going to take our job, it's going to replace us. And I
Mhm.
look at that
Yeah.
very differently, specifically in claims, because we have such talented individuals. Our adjusters are so talented in terms of their empathy and their ability to assist our customers and walk them down through that difficult time period, that
Mhm.
going to be our adjusters walking in parallel with this technology that's just going to amplify our abilities and allow us to be that much better and more impactful in terms of what we do. So yeah, technology, very much reshaping the landscape of what's possible and what exists in terms of our potential in insurance, but even more specifically in the claims environment. Yeah, no, big question, very broad question. I think data really rests at the foot of everything we're trying to accomplish. In terms of our understanding, our analysis of the business. Insurance has always been linked to being a very data-rich environment. I think big data is a term that's not necessarily used anymore, but insurance has always been in that conversation of big
Yeah.
data because we do have so much data available at our fingertips. I mean, that starts all
Yeah.
the way from the point of policy inception, with, how we price our products and things of that nature, but extends all the way through things I've talked about already, how we understand our customer at a deeper level. I think one of our goals is making sure that we are offering a product that, meets our customers' needs at the point of that loss. How can we personalize those products and develop products and services that meet them at that point of, in my case, a loss and deliver a service in a much more meaningful way and that. So data helps inform those decisions every single day that we approach that from. At the general, one of the things that we lean into pretty heavily is the partnerships we have through our data science team, how we're structuring our data, right? How we're drawing out insights in a much more meaningful way. I think there's a number of pieces of the puzzle that we can put
Yeah.
together, some
Mhm.
disparate pieces of
Yeah.
information that we can put together to kind of try and predict certain things and help inform our decision making. So it prompts a number of interesting questions in that respect. I think about, I mentioned predicting total losses earlier. I think about how we can piece those puzzle pieces together a little bit more early in the process to maybe, predict a total loss quicker and take what would have been several days or even weeks down to a decision right away to move a vehicle a certain direction and move that customer to remediation much
Mhm.
quicker. I think about on the other side with some of the volatility we've had in the market, particularly in the insurance space, how can we identify market trends quicker to be able to react faster, right? And maintain
Yeah.
a more competitive position in our segment to again, make sure that we are, priced for our customer as competitively as possible. And that we're able to react and adjust much quicker than we have historically, where we would have waited months or
Mhm.
quarters or even years to identify a trend. We can use
Yeah.
the data much more meaningfully to do that quicker.
Next up, we are talking to the knowledge guru himself, Dr. Thomas Blumer. Ever feel like there's just too much information to keep track of at work? Same. Thomas talks about how digital adoption platforms are changing the game for knowledge management. He has got lots of experience with AI, machine learning, and making sure people actually use the tools they have. If you are into making work smarter, I mean, who isn't? This one's for you.
Well, one of the challenges as an ERP company is to help people onboard customers and employees very quickly. And we have done that in traditional ways with traditional training, all the way back, classroom training. Then we could convert that into e-learning. And that was great. Like we saw a huge adoption jump there. But there was still something missing. And we always felt it's like people get the training in the wrong time, not when they really need it. They had to schedule it. And once digital adoption platforms became available, it's like, that's what we need. We can train as people need it inside the application. So we actually built a lot of training right in the application. And if that was not appropriate because some use cases may be too complex, we could link them directly to the learning management system, right to the right place, so they don't have to go and start looking like what traditional links normally do. And if something changed, we can easily change it because we still have the control. It's not a hard link like what you have done in traditional system. So by doing so, we could really move the needle and we increased about onboarding time or decreased the time by 26%, like huge gains,
Wow.
making that happen. Also from call deflection for support center, the first year, I think we closed about 26,000 support calls. I mean, it's always hard to really, like, was that really an avoided call or maybe, and how many did you avoid, which you don't really measure. But so that's a safe number. We felt very comfortable. But yeah, it was a huge game changer for us. Just for
Yeah.
the $8 to $10, like I have seen different numbers. Now, if you think about an ERP system, you can't solve anything for $8. For $8, someone
Yes.
picks up the phone. The issues are normally more complex. So we talk more about $150 for a support ticket, like especially if then an escalation is involved to R&D, it gets really expensive very quickly. And people work on the wrong thing instead of building new exciting products. Absolutely. So digital adoption platform, often abbreviated as DApp, is a software overlay on top of your existing application. That can be a web application, a desktop application, or even a mobile application. Now you wonder, like, why would I need an overlay on my software I just purchased? It's like, well, just think about how many times you got frustrated because it didn't work the way you expect it to work, or how much time you wasted finding a feature exists, but you don't use it all the time. And that even happens when I use Instagram. So like, where is my saved image? And then you have to click 5 items till you see it. Now with DApp, you can just automate that process. If that's something which you do all the time, or your organization needs to do all the time, you can now create your own button on any screens which makes sense to go to these other screens you always have a hard time finding or is time consuming. So you can actually modify your application without actually going to the code level to make your unique user experience much better. And to your second part, why is it important right now? I mean, there's so much change coming. There's so much AI at the brink to be introduced. Now you have a tool to control AI. You can control other applications. And more importantly, you can actually see what's happening in your organization. Many times people don't even know how their own application is used, where it works well, where people struggle, where people have a lot of errors. Now you have all this visibility and you can take actionable steps to help the situation with DApp. So I think it's just a tremendous tool.
Now, here's where things get futuristic. Kevin Alster joins us to talk about AI avatars in learning and development. Yep, we are talking about synthetic humans teaching real humans. Sounds wild, right? It is actually. Kevin's worked with some pretty cool tech, and in this episode, he shares how AI avatars are already being used to make learning more engaging and accessible. Curious about what's next for L&D? You will love this one.
So what are AI avatars? I think it's important to mention that AI avatars are human models created. So they're models that are created from real footage of actors, and they're animated using AI that's interpreting the written words or the typed words that you put in. And so what our tech at Synthesia does at a very high level is that it reads the words that people have typed in, and it interprets those words and sentences, and it uses them to generate an AI voice that should sound realistic, animate the avatar, and then give it the expressiveness that's based on the context and the tone of that script. And I think that's something that's important to mention, because there have been different types of animated characters, or that's not something that is unusual in L&D, but I think what we've seen in the past 2 years or so is how AI avatars have really changed how we generate things like talking head videos, or who are these characters that we have in our learning experiences. And so if we look at what we've had in the past in learning and development, we use a lot of pictures or examples of characters to kind of tell different stories, or maybe kind of as course guides or facilitators. But what they've been in the past is kind of like these really static, kind of awkward stock images. But now, if you're able to type in text, you're able to generate essentially a talking head video or a character. And so how we're seeing it having an impact on L&D is in many ways. But I think first and foremost, starting with the simplest, is that L&D has, whether that's courses or resources or different types of digital learning, there's a need to use video as a way to deliver that information. And I'm not a person who thinks that we should use video for everything, but if you need to create video, how would you have to do that in the past? You'd have to storyboard it out, you'd have to script it out, you'd have to then record yourself, or you had to be on camera, or even worse, I've had the terrible experience of having to coach subject matter experts who were not ready for camera to try and be on camera. And then you edit it down. And once you're done with that, then you have this MP4 file that is that you then put into your LMS or however you're delivering that content. But then as that video starts to live online, it starts to age, maybe things go out of date, and if you need to make a change, then you need to go back and you need to re-record that. Well, when you are talking about AI video or using AI avatars, if you need to switch voiceover, or if you need to translate into multiple languages, or you just need to make content up to date, you can now just click a button rather than me having to hire an editor. So the first and foremost use case is this idea of you can use AI avatars to generate video faster. And again, that is not the key answer to all of L&D's problems. There's, of course, problems of measurement. There's problems of how do we deliver these learning experiences. But really, this is what we're seeing is kind of the main use case. If you do e-learning or digital learning of any type, and you use video, it's very easy to put avatars into an AI video as a way to optimize your workflow, to make this work of creating the content go faster. And so on average, I think if you're talking budget-wise, people say, if you were to hire a live editing crew plus work hours, it'd probably cost you around maybe $2,500 to $5,000 per video. But then if you're able to create a video in minutes just by typing and kind of like building a PowerPoint, then there's the obvious cost savings there. But really, it's a big part of this is just saving people time. It costs so much time to create these things. There's a lot of other use cases as well, but I think that time and cost savings of creating the actual video is kind of the main key use for these AI avatars. Sure. So the examples that I think are kind of the best use of this tool boil down into three different buckets. So one of them is bringing skills, thinking about a experience and how these avatars are used to create a learning experience. Some of them are about communication and how we use video communication, and one of them is about more so kind of time or cost to delivery. And so I think the one that's my favorite and the one that I want to start with is we work with a Zoom who they have a lot of courses and resources for sales enablement training, where a lot of those courses are built in Articulate, Storyline, and Rise. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to create interactive courses and resources that can ultimately help them save on face-to-face training time. Because as you can imagine, pulling people away from their desks and their computers to sit in a training actually is a huge cost to the company. And so what they've done is one of their instructional designers for this particular skill that they were teaching, he builds these really interactive stories where he has this one called the Deal Detective, where he's created this entire story world where the learner is in the role of a detective, and they have to figure out where a deal has broken down and who they can question to save it. So there are different suspects, which are different stakeholders in this journey. There's different clues that they might find, but really they've used the avatars rather than just kind of having these flat pictures. They've used the avatars and they've used music to kind of really build this world and create this rich experience that not only gives the employees a chance to practice these skills, but it also kind of gives them motivation to continue in the story. And of course, a lot goes into the design of this, but what he's able to do, this instructional designer is able to do, is it takes a lot of different videos to generate something that's interactive and immersive and allows somebody to make decisions along the way. Meaning you have to have 500 versions of a conversation in order to get to 3 different outcomes. And so why I like this example is because it's moving away from the shift that we have in L&D of building courses and resources that are about information delivery rather than purposeful practice or giving folks information and then kind of giving them a chance to analyze it or bring their prior experience in. We're very much focused on saying, here's this information, now learn it and take a test. But this person at Zoom is using the avatars to really create different roles and characters to immerse the learner in the learning.
Yeah.
Another big shift that we're seeing, especially in the Fortune 500 space, was DuPont, who is moving post-pandemic from virtual instructor-led training, because during the pandemic we're all in our computers and training shifted mostly to online. They had a bevy of training that was in there teaching the fundamentals of operational excellence. This is something that is taught to the global DuPont chemical company, and what they did is they wanted to use these transcripts to create courses, asynchronous courses that they could deliver at scale, but they didn't have the video production resources needed to hire out an external company. And so rather than paying around $15,000 per video because it has to be corporate and polished and really a high production experience. They're able to bring those skills in-house. And what I like about the story is that the L&D team has a new center, a new service offering for the rest of the company, where before they were just kind of curriculum designers. Now they're able to kind of build solutions end to end because they have that video experience. So that speaks to more sort of, again, that idea of cost or time to create something. And then I think the last one for me was Heineken, it's more a general HR strategy that they have, where the tagline that our champion uses that they call PowerPoints poison points because everybody uses them and nobody pays attention. And so they're shifting their internal communication strategy from using these 45-minute webinar recordings to these short bite-sized videos that employees can download and watch on their own time. And they're experimenting with it as a way to have avatars deliver information, or maybe you have an avatar of a senior leader who's in charge of a particular business unit or department. And they're able to say, okay, this is my team, here's what you need to know, versus, hey, watch this 45-minute recording, which nobody will watch.
In the next segment, we talk instructional design with the amazing Cami B. Cami's got one of the best stories. She calls herself the accidental instructional designer and literally wrote a book about it. She has been in the game for a long time, so when she talks about what's working and what's not in learning, you know it's legit. Plus, she's got some great insights on how to measure whether your learning programs are actually making a difference. Trust me, this episode's packed with practical takeaways for you.
Yeah, I mean, every learning solution is going to have a different set of metrics. It may or may not be, it shouldn't be completion, right? It should actually tie back to business results. If you're trying to improve customer service, is it your NPS score that actually goes up? And then how do you demonstrate that correlation? So understanding at the beginning of every learning engagement that you're trying, what is it that we're trying to measure? What does success look like? You have to work with your stakeholders really clearly on that and try to map that out. So there's not one answer for that, but it's really important to ensure that you are asking those questions during the design phase. Staring into my crystal ball. Well, right now, everyone's kind of dealing with the wave of AI and how disruptive that is. What is that going to do to my job? How is that going to change my workflow? Seeing a lot of data about AI and where it is getting integrated into workflows right now, really as a way to speed up content development and reduce costs. The risk, of course, is that we're going to create more garbage more quickly and just inundate people with content because we can do it so fast. This was something that happened about 2000 was when some of the first authoring tools came on the market. And I had been in this field already for 10 years at that point, and we were dying for these tools. We were dying for templated tools that would speed up content production. And that was really disruptive to the market, though, because now anyone could create e-learning. You didn't need to go to a custom content development company and have something hand programmed and cost thousands and thousands of dollars. People could do it themselves. So at Kineo, we were really focused. That was when we got started, and our focus was on helping organizations do better design with these tools, because what matters is great instructional design. What matters is keeping the human being at the heart of the solution that you're designing. And that same thing is happening today, I think. We now we have AI as the big disruptor, so it's going to be baked into all of our authoring tools, right? So you're going to be able to create even more content more quickly, which sounds awesome, but there's a danger with that. And so the core skills of instructional design, ensuring that we are designing thoughtfully for human beings, making sure we're having the right impact, that does not go away. So emerging technologies, there's always something emerging. And if we keep our focus on what really matters, which is human beings, people, my mantra is it's all about the people, man. Keep human beings at the center of it. Then we will ensure that we are, collaborating well with AI as we go forward. I do think there's 3 key areas that I've been kind of focusing on and trying to upskill myself on, which is really AI skills. If you see it, there's a lot of conversation in the market about skills development and skills tools and skills technology. So how is that going to shift what we're doing? And then, of course, data and analytics and that measurement piece. So keep your eye on those areas, keep growing and learning with them, have the appropriate amount of skepticism too. I mean, 10 years ago, everything was about mobile learning and everything had to be on your mobile device. And we had to really make sure that everything was going to, because this vision that people were going to be sitting on a subway, taking their e-learning on their way to work. And you know what? Nobody's doing that. If they're on the subway, they're looking at Instagram. They are not taking your e-learning. The data is now showing us that we build mobile first solutions, and it's, 5% of the audience is taking them on a mobile device. Most people are still sitting down at their desktop. So be careful of these emerging technologies. Have the appropriate amount of skepticism, but also don't let it pass you by. Don't be left in the dust either. So it's really important to pay attention and be upskilling as you go.
Last but not the least, we got Jason Radisson, the founder of Movo. He's someone who made the leap from the corporate world to running his own company, and he has got really honest take on what that transition is like. He talks about how Movo helps businesses manage change, something we all know can be tough. If you are into entrepreneurship or dealing with big changes at work, this one's gonna be super relatable to you.
I think there are different models of being a founder, and there are different models. I consider myself a founder and a technologist. My particular model is, I think the problem is the problem. I think I've been working on the frontline work problem, how to help blue collar and skilled professionals get ahead and get more productive and get ahead in life in various forms for something like 30 years. But I think the approach of technology is, and I had a couple of roles fairly early on, and going back really even to studies where I saw, where you could take a set of math and technological skills and apply them to a problem and tremendously improve the solution of that problem in the world. One of the things I worked on in grad school was the distribution of US aid. We had in my faculty, we had a lot of projects with USAID. And so, part of what I spent my time as a graduate student on was building models of where really to put the aid and where it could have the most impact. And, in some sense, there are venture capitalists that have quantitative teams that do this kind of work as well. That work first really opened my eyes to the ability of being able to sort of like make very elevated data rich decisions about things that had huge impact. When I went in my first job after grad school to McKinsey, I did a lot of similar projects. And, my role in particular was sort of helping companies to merge and cleaning up in post-merger environments, which oftentimes is, really large companies, hundreds of thousands of jobs of frontline workers, and deciding how to reteam them, how the combined company should deploy these workers. And I did that work for about 10 years and built a number of processes. And I think the other thing is sort of there's the math, then there's the process, then how you apply it in technology. And I think it's sort of the ideal training for sort of deployment of algorithms, machine learning and AI into large businesses. I think that's really where my passion became this career and this skill set. And, the thing about all that I've sort of learned is, anywhere you've got new stuff happening in the world, there's always the technology is generally a little bit set. Like it's not, entirely fresh. We have these generative AI models with the LLMs that are out there. Who knows where that's going to go? We probably need another 20 years to make something out of it. So in that early phase, you need change management people and people with that kind of leadership to put the technology into businesses and enough technology background. And as I said, you're not going to be, nobody comes through university knowing how to deploy the mobile internet. We were all trying to figure it out 25 or so years ago. And that, a lot of these different technologies as they've come up. So, I think that's the bottom line is sort of figuring out your approach as an entrepreneur. And that really has been mine, taking technologies that could potentially really impact millions of workers and then putting them into the world in a startup or in a big company, in an existing company. Yeah, yeah. And oftentimes the processes they're completely different, and I think in the technology industry, we have a lot of best practices and just sort of ways of working, and everybody eventually loses their way. At some point you're just a large company and these things are super hard. But there's a beautiful phase where you've got a big business, and anytime you want to do something new, you're able to quickly spin up a team and go do a new business, a new product, a new feature in a way where, a couple of leaders, of true leaders in that early stage of that endeavor, pick it up and start to scale it up and then bring more people onto the team so that it can grow and become the new business line in your company or the entirely new way of working. And I think with Movo, we're looking at the HR field as really, I mean, there's no way to really sugarcoat it. There's going to be an age not too distant in the future where we do HR in a very different way. Most of HR, headcount wise, most HR professionals in the world are doing compliance work. And compliance work is exactly the stuff that AIs do exceptionally well. So, I look at it at the HR industry and I say there's always going to be, just like there will always be finance leaders, there will always be HR leaders. But a lot of those mid-level, entry-level jobs are just going to go away. And I think that's not specifically what we're addressing with Movo. Really, we're more addressing operational awareness and sort of tactical deployment of teams and optimizing workforces. But from the HR space, I think there's really this great opportunity for AI to be transformative. So many challenges along the way. As startup captains, we make thousands of decisions a quarter, and not all of them are great. We always strive to get better and better at decision making, and small teams, I think, do a fairly decent job with it. What I would highlight is just, I think the real challenge in sort of broad enterprise technology is this cannibalization effect. How do you displace the big incumbents that are in the space? And I think there's so much that the systems integration companies, to name some of the names, places like Accenture, places like IBM, places like Slalom, some of the more specialized companies are out there really helping their large corporate clients to integrate the latest technologies into the hundreds of technologies they already buy. If it's a Fortune 500 company, then to also manage all of the change management, the rewriting of processes, the retraining of employees. I think as a startup captain, one of the hardest things, most challenging things in the enterprise space is connecting with that group and sort of bringing your technology into broader and broader audiences. It's relatively easy to get a few first clients and to start to prove your technology, but then the scaling and working with the bigger channel partners that are out there, I think that's really the 5 to 10-year problem that I think most of us are facing.
And that's a wrap on season 4. Honestly, it's been such a fun season, and we are so glad you have been along for the ride. Whether you're here for the tech, the learning insights, or just curious about what's next in the digital world, we hope you have found something that sparked your interest. If you enjoy these episodes, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. It really helps. And hey, feel free to share your favorite episode with a friend. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and we'll catch you in the next season. Thank you.